Okay, for part 5 of the lesson, we're going to learn about how rivers interact with groundwater systems using the local example of the San Diego River, and we might also, if we're lucky, look from Oak Canyon, or you can do the Oak Canyon field trip and learn about it that way. So, what we're going to do is first thing we're going to share the screen of showing Google Earth view of the greater San Diego area. So here you can see the San Diego River is running its course through here. You notice it comes out of the Peninsula Ranges, has carved a deep valley. The river is actually almost as old, parts of the river are almost as old as the mountains themselves, or at least their most recent uplift event. We know this because a lot of the rivers in Southern California and Northern Baja cut right through the mountain ranges, like the Santa Ana River does through the Santa Ana Canyon, and the San Diego River does through Mission Trails. So let's fly down this river, see what we got. We have, first of all, I see a bunch of these little lakes and quarries indicating everything you notice about San Diego River is that most of the time there's not a lot of water in the riverbed. So we follow this. Water comes together with Las Conchas Creek. You can see that actually the water table is never that far from the surface. You have all these little ponds forming here, including a rather spectacular one that's through the heart of Santee. Then, the river seems to disappear a bit. Goes to the country club, and then finally comes to the hills, where it starts to sunlight. Or what do we see? We see the river resurface and generally flows year round. So when the Spanish were looking for a place to make their first settlement, they needed two things. They needed a parking space. Fortunately, San Diego Bay has this nice headland of Point Loma to sort of protect your boat from the elements. They also needed a perennial source of fresh water. Remember that chart we showed you earlier at the beginning of this lecture? Yeah, they needed fresh water. And they found the fresh water up here in what is now Mission Trails. Let's see what's going on here. We're going to switch our view here to the whiteboard. So what we got here is got some granite, a big mountain of granite here. Then we have this, then we have our land surface is sort of gently sloping down towards Mission Trails, and the river, San Diego River, is running on top of it. And then at the below Mission Trails, you have Mission Gorge, you have Grantville out over here. The river is going to be moving a bit. The river does something kind of like so, where it kind of cuts down through Mission Trails, comes out through Grantville, slicing through the mountains. Now, notice what we have over here on the Santee, the right side of the figure. Santee El Cajon Basin. The Santee El Cajon Basin has quite a bit of sand and gravel. Sand and gravel that leads the river to go underground here. So generally, what you get in the upper parts of the Santee El Cajon Basin is something known as a losing stream. A stream that is losing water to the aquifer. As you go further downstream, however, the river starts to pick up water. What happens as you get towards the downstream end is this low permeability granite is not going to allow the water to pass through it as easily. And so you're going to get a lot more water coming up here at the surface. You're going to get a much fuller San Diego River through Mission Gorge than you would get in Santee and El Cajon, where it's primarily underground. Oops. We're going to call this a gaining stream. Same here, the water is transferred from the aquifer back to the surface. And so if you're walking along a riverbed, you see the river either disappear or suddenly emerge from nowhere. That's what you're seeing. And that's also what we saw in our flyover of Nebraska. So now we're going to see how some of these different systems play out in other basin in the real world. So you can see the San Diego River here in the upper part of the El Monte Valley, east of Lakeside, is losing water to the water table. And here it is at Mission Dam, reemerging and generally full of water in the spot. Here's what your typical well looks like. It's not that circular stone thing with a little roof over it, the bucket. Those are way out of date. We'll just say that. This is what a modern well intends to look like. Here's what an artesian well looks like. This is an rather vigorous one in the middle of Texas known as Catfish Farms Well. It's actually no longer operating because San Antonio realized that this single well could potentially be endangering their water supply, and the water rights of a million people take higher precedence over whatever the heck this landowner is trying to do with it. Texas actually does a pretty good job regulating groundwater. And here's what a spring looks like. This is a particularly nice one in Austin. If you stand right here on the screen, you'll actually sometimes feel water bubbling up through the cracks. This is known as the famous Barton Springs of Austin, and is probably one of the nicest swimming pools I've ever been to in my entire life. Here's a closer one. This is the source of the San Diego River. And while some would argue that the vegetation's growing greener here because my beautiful wife is at the center of it all, and I would be hard pressed to argue otherwise, there's also a little bit of groundwater near the surface here that's not present anywhere else in this landscape. This was during an exceptionally dry year, 2014. Here's what some springs might look like out in the desert. These are palm trees sticking up out of the land surface at the foot of this mountain. There's a little fault that's allowing water to get up to the surface more easily. So the next part of the lecture, we're going to go into some of the environmental challenges facing aquifers, and then we're going to look at cave and karst systems.